Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jesse, and today we have with us Lucas. He is our web designer and developer here at Bywater Solutions, and he's going to talk to you about 5 jQuery tips and tricks for your Koha system. So, Lucas, go ahead.
Hello, good morning or afternoon, everyone. Is my screen being shared right now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, so we're just going to go over a couple little jQuery, also CSS type hacks or things that I see a lot. So let's get started. I am going to start with Bootstrap. Knowing some things about Bootstrap can be very helpful when trying to manipulate your staff client or your OPAC, do different things. And I am just going to demonstrate that a little bit today. So I'm going to go to a system preference called OPAC credits, which is the OPAC footer. And here I have some filler text. So let's take a look at this. So this is just HTML and not jQuery. So let's go here to my OPAC, and you see I have 3 divs. I'm going to inspect the element and look at each one of these. And you can see just putting those divs in like that, it's kind of messy and hard to see the difference from one to the other. So we could use our own CSS if we wanted to kind of write this and make it look good, but that might take a long time, and Bootstrap makes it fairly easy to do so. So take a look here at Bootstrap's scaffolding system. I know that there are 12 rows across here, which you can't see. But if I come in here and just add new classes to my HTML, I'm going to call this span 4. And I'm actually going to copy that into each one of these to tell this to span 4 parts of the 12. Now let's go refresh our page here. Aha, and so with just by simply adding a class, I've made this much neater. And you can look more at Bootstrap's documentation and learn about all their classes. They have many. Another one I'll use a lot are alert classes. And let's give this one an alert success. And let's give this one an alert danger. And you can see here, I'm adding multiple classes to my HTML just by adding a space in between each class. So I'm keeping those span 4s, but I'm also adding some other classes, and I'll show you what those do. So here I've added an alert class, which may be familiar to you. You see it often in Koha. When you generate a hold, you'll see something like this. This is some success text, and this is danger text. So without writing any of my own CSS, I've easily kind of manipulated and changed my OPAC. I'll show you also a couple more examples of that. I'm going to jump over to some jQuery, which I'm going to put in the intranet user JS. So a couple good jQuery tips right here. I am going to do some things to the, let's see, the member entry page. So one rule for me when writing jQuery in an attempt to sort of narrow it down and make sure it's only affecting the page in the particular area where you want it to affect, I'm going to inspect my element. And in Koha, the body of each page has a unique ID. And you can see there's the body element with an ID of patron member entry. So let's go back to my jQuery. You can see here I've written a simple if statement. If this page has length, then I'm going to do stuff inside of it. This makes sure that I'm only affecting this page and no other page with this piece of jQuery. This is helpful because often we'll see classes that have the same names on other page, and we can have some unwanted effects if we don't sort of limit our jQuery with something like this. Now what I've done here is I'm trying to add a class or a div element underneath the address. So if I save that, you can see I get something like this. But down here, they look like this. So it's formatted a little bit differently. I have a little tip or a hint here. So let's go back over here. You see what I've done is I'm just, again, leveraging Bootstrap. I'm using a class called hint. I don't need that label, danger. And then when I go back over here, you can see now it's taken on the hint class in Bootstrap to look exactly like some of the other ones in Koha where we've already leveraged that hint class. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to go read more on Bootstrap classes. These can really be helpful to you.
Lucas, we have a question. Do you know what version of Bootstrap Koha is using?
It's a good question. And I just had to check that myself before we started here. And the OPAC and the staff client are using different versions. On the OPAC, we're using 2.3.1. And on the staff client, we're using 3.3.7. Now, this is on master, not 1905 or 1911, but master. But I do believe it is the same. And that is a good question, because if you're looking through Bootstrap documentation, I think they're now on version 4 or 5. So you may be disappointed when you find some cool new class things that they've done that won't work in Koha because we don't yet support that version.
Thanks, Lucas.
Yep. If there's no other Bootstrap questions, I'm going to move on to jQuery selectors and how to better utilize the selectors to select the correct elements that you want to manipulate and do stuff to. It's good to note that CSS selectors are almost in every way identical to jQuery selectors. Which is nice. So what you know about CSS selectors can usually be applied to jQuery selectors. So let's go over a couple of those. And to do so, we're going to use an opaque results page, like so. So for this, I'm going to switch over to opaque user JS. And I already have some things in here. Actually, before we look at this page, let's open the advanced page for a good first example. Okay, if I inspect my elements here on the page, what I'm going to attempt to do is hide each one of these dropdowns. Now, if I look at each one, I can see that I have a search field 0. I have a search field _1. And I have a search field _2. So, and these are IDs. So we have classes and IDs. IDs are usually for something unique, and classes are for something that maybe will repeat itself multiple times on a page. So I've already wrote this jQuery. I could do something like this to hide each one of those. Write a line for each one, and they're gone. So that works. But it's not as efficient as using this wildcard selector, which what I do here is I've put the selector in square brackets. I say ID with the caret symbol equals, and then the start of any one of my selectors. So in this case, I've used as much as I possibly can, search field _, and this is where it changes. So if I do this, again, it should keep all those hidden. I don't even, in this case, need all of this. Anything that starts with search dash will also work. So that can be very useful when you're trying to hide maybe multiple elements that have a very similar name. Okay, comment that out. Now we're going to turn over to the results page here. And I'm going to do some different selector things with these online access links. Now what I have here, we'll look, is I have most of these coming from loc.gov. In fact, almost every one of these online resource links comes from the Library of Congress. I changed one this morning, this one, which comes from Koha community.org. So when I click on this, that's where it takes me. By its attribute, which in this case is the href. So a cool thing we can do with jQuery is use the href or any attribute to select elements. So, and commenting this out, I'm going to start by just, I'm selecting online resources, links, and this will do every single link, and I'm just going to add a class, a bootstrap class like we just talked about, called alert danger, just something we can see for an example. So by doing this, every online resource link has been given this red text in this bootstrap class. So every single one should be like that. Okay, let's see what else we can do here. So I'm going to comment that one out. I'm going to use a little bit more specific selector. So this one is the same, but after the anchor, I'm going to put these square brackets in, and I'm going to say I want only the ones with an href of Koha community.org, http. So let's take a look at that. So that should make it so only the first one is selected, because that's the only one that has that href. Scroll down. Yep. Okay, cool. So this one looks almost identical. I have a different URL in there, or href. You can see it's this one. The only difference here is I have an exclamation in front of the href. So let's save that one. Reload our page here and see what happens. Okay, so this one has gained the class. This one has gained the class. This one has not. We take a look at this one. This is that exact URL I described in the jQuery right there. So what we're saying with the exclamation point is every one except this one. So that could be a nice and useful selector as well. The most useful, though, I think, is this one, which says the same thing. It says look for an href, but it says look for anyone that has this in the string. So this will get me anyone that has, it doesn't have to start or end with this. In fact, it could be this. And when I go over here, anyone that has that href in there will be selected. So this is really nice in this context when you're, maybe you want to do some jQuery to your online resource links that come from Overdrive particularly. And you can do that just by writing a selector like that. This one here has a $sign in front of it, and it's a little bit different. So instead of looking at online resources, now I'm looking at cover images. And the $sign denotes anything that ends with JPEG. And in this case, I'm hiding it. So this will hide any cover image with a source which ends in JPEG. So that can also be helpful. And then just for a couple, play around a little bit more with some selectors. There's, for these examples, I'm going to use the results page again. And if I inspect the results page, I can see that these sets of results right here are actually just one big table element. So I'm going to use that to explain some of these other selectors. So TR is table row. So this is going to select any table row, but I'm going to add a colon first. And what I'm going to do here is just use the jQuery CSS method to add some CSS to make these things stand out a little bit. So what I'm saying here is find the table and find the table rows and find the first table row and give it some CSS. So let's see what that does. Okay, so we've given the first one this border. Cool. We can do the same thing with last. I won't show you that one, as I'm sure you can imagine what it will do. This is another good one. These are odd and even. So if I say this with even, it should select every even row. And it does. Although something to point out here is this is 0 indexed. So while this might seem to you like it would be the odd rows, 1, 2, 3, we have to remember this is 0 index. So this is 0, 1, 2. And if we go down through here, you'll see that every other one is selected. We can also use these little greater than or less than functions, which are great. So every table row that is greater than 3, let's do this thing too. And you'll see the first couple. First 3, remember 0, 1, 2, 3, don't have it. And then everyone after will. We can also use nth child, which is just a nice way of saying the third. So the third table row, we'd like to do this too. So there we go, the third one. And this is funny because the nth child works a little bit differently. It is not 0 indexed. So the third one is the third one here, not the fourth one. And then if I just add an n on there, I can get this to the repeat, or I can basically say every third one. Cool. All right, so those are some basic things about selectors. I will also have a link for everyone at the end of this. I'll put it in the Zoom right now, actually. I can explain some more of these selectors. Knowing some stuff about these advanced selectors can really help you when you're trying to manipulate your OPAC or your staff client and just get at that one element that maybe it is difficult to do so. There's definitely always many ways to sort of get at those elements. All right, let's keep going here and get a little bit more complicated. We're going to jump back over to the advanced search. And I want to look a little bit into using arrays or objects, JavaScript arrays or objects, sort of great ways of making your jQuery easier to read and easier to sort of update and change later. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so often I may be asked with these drop down. Let's make sure. Let me comment this out first. So if we take a look at these drop downs, small technical difficulty. Okay, I'm just going to take everything out. Okay. See if okay, yes, this is working. Okay, so yeah, arrays. So let's take a look at this piece of jQuery. Okay, so first again, I'm using my my way of limiting this to a single page, in this case, the advanced search page. And I am going to call an array right here. So this array is just what an array is just a set of values separated by commas. So what these values are in this case are, if I inspect the element and look at my select, there are these values here for subject and keyword and so on and so forth. So often we want to hide some of these, and when we do, we often want to hide them from all three of these drop downs. So what I've did is I've just added these, the ones that I want to show to this array here. And then I've added this function which looks in this array for these values. And if they're in there, you see that it says this show. So we will show this. Here we're using our wildcard selector to do this to each one of these drop downs. So we don't have to repeat our jQuery. Now I'm just going to take everything out of here. If I do so, you see that there's nothing in these drop downs because we've told it, the first thing I've told it to do is hide everything. and then I'll show the values that I want. So I like arrays because I can have a few things in here at first. Keyword, subject, and maybe later I could come back and add some others. And to update this, all I have to do is add the new values. And I will have this jQuery if anybody is interested in seeing it after the end of this webinar. So that's arrays. Objects are a bit like arrays, a bit more complicated. Let's take a look at some jQuery that I have that includes an object. And as again, the main thing here is it's easy for me to update. So we got a bunch here. And in this case, I'm going to take a bunch of this out because it's almost too much to read. So let's make a very small object. So here I have an object. It's called video, and I have a second one called thesis. And this, again, it gets values and stores them. I'm going to go to the live site where this is actually doing something. So what I'm doing with these objects is creating search groups. So I've made one search group called video. What this does here is instead of, you can see they have a lot of collection codes here. And instead of going through here and finding every video and clicking it to do a search or video type category that they have, I'm just going to click on video and have those highlighted for me. You can see that this does so for each one of their groups. And again, I like the ease here because if they add a new one, and I can just come in here and I can say, oh, there's a new video. It's called MC code new video, and that's been added to the group, and that has been updated. So that's why I love these things. So I'm going to move on to one final thing I have before I open it up to questions. And this is going to pertain to some jQuery that I see a lot. Now I know we have a column configurator in Koha to configure some columns, hide and show the columns we want. Problem is we the developers, we haven't gotten around to making this work for every table that we see in Koha. Like for example, the holdings table. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so often in this table, I'm asked, okay, can we get rid of one of these columns? Some of these columns, we don't need them. And I'm going to show you how I do that. So in this case, I'm going to go to intranet user.js. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to, so you see what I'm doing here is I'm using JavaScript comments to comment out or certain sections so that that code won't run. Okay, so what I've done here is, again, I'm limiting this to the catalog detail page. And this is a data table. These lots of these tables that you see in Koha like this, where we can sort and do these special things with our data tables. So we have to sort of treat them a little bit differently in Jquery. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to hide the date ascension column. So in this Jquery, I'm going to create a variable called the date ascension column. And I'm going to use a selector which gets the column that contains the words date ascension. And I actually want the index of that. So I want the what number in the table is this? What column number is this? So that's what I'm doing here. And then lastly, I'm going to take that variable, which has found the column number, and I'm going to tell it to its visibility to be false. So don't show it. So I come back here and you see no more date ascension column. And just to show some more on that, I can also make a new variable called last seen column, copy everything over, change this so it says last seen, and then come in here and add that. So now I have date ascension and last seen column. And if I've done this right, both should be hidden. All right. And again, I'll have this jQuery when we're done here if anybody is interested in it for their own use. So let me comment that back out again. See if I have gotten my columns back. Yes, I have. And just one more very similar trick here, but instead of hiding it this time, I'm going to reorder these. But let's choose a better holdings table, one that has multiple results. Here we go. So if you come in here, we can see I can toggle last seen, ascending or descending, and that's nice. But when I load the page, it's not sorting those that way. So what I'm going to do is force it to do that to begin with, because sometimes we just want those to be like that on load. So I've done much the same that I did up here. I've defined the last seen column's index. I've just changed a little bit of what we're doing here. Instead of messing with the visibility, I'm going to say order it, the last seen column, which is my variable, descending. So let's save that. Let's go back to our table. And you can see here that the last seen is now in descending order. I'll come back in here though, and I can also write I can change this from DESC to ASC for ascending. And do it the opposite way. So those are some nice little jQuery tricks for manipulating these data tables. And like I said, we can have that jQuery available if needed. And that is all I have for jQuery tips and tricks. Unless there are questions, I'll hand it back over to JZ.
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, if anyone has questions, please let us know in either the chat box or the Q&A box. We'll have the jQuery that Lucas displayed today in a blog post, and that email will get sent out to all of our registrants and attendees with a link to the recorded video that if you want to go back and watch anything Lucas has shared, you'll be able to watch that on demand. Okay, if you have any other questions, please let us know. Of course, you can always reach us in Slack if you have a question, or shoot us an email, or ticket, of course. Thank you, Lucas, so much.
My pleasure.
Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.